So welcome everyone to the Taos Institute Dialogue with the Author. We're really happy that you're joining us today. And we are here with Robyn Penman to talk about her book, Justice in the Making, Relating, Participating, and Communicating. Thank you, Robyn, for being here today. So we have an hour together. We're also here with Sheila McNamee and Saliha Bava from the Taos Institute Board of Directors, and they will be leading this conversation. I just want to say a few words about the Taos Institute. So we are a virtual educational organization and we promote social constructionist practices. And we do so in many, many different ways. So webinars like this event, we have free downloadable books available, over 90 books available in many different languages. We have an online community, the Taos Institute Commons, that you have probably visited since you're here at this event. And we hope that you will continue to visit and post your comments, questions, and visit the different spaces and resources available there. And I will not take any more time than this and pass it on to Sheila McNamee to introduce our guests today. Thank you, Sheila.
Thanks, Alex, and thank you all for being here. It's great to see so many familiar faces and great to see Robyn after all these years. I don't remember the last time I saw you, but I do remember. I'm going to give more of a personal introduction to Robyn for those of you who don't know her. I do remember the first time I met you. I think it was 1978, maybe 79. And I was a graduate student, and you were, I think, a visiting scholar at UMass Amherst. And I have a picture that I searched all afternoon for today, but did not find, of us on Barnett Pierce's deck.
Yes.
With Ram Hooray and you and Barnett and Jack and myself and a couple of other graduate students. And that was the first time we met. But since then, we've kept in touch, and you've been so active in really bringing a communication perspective forward. Robyn's work has been really focused on what it means to communicate well, to be a good communicator, particularly in public and civic spheres, and trying to understand how we can make better social worlds. She is an independent scholar and communication and research consultant. She's an active board member and co-director of the CMM Institute project on Cosmopolis, and editor of the CMM Institute Press, and an honorary associate of that institute, and much, much more. I think we can provide further details about Robyn's credentials, but I don't want to take more time, so I pass it to you, Robyn. No, I pass it to you, Saliha. Sorry.
Give me a second before we go to Robyn, just to, thanks for that, Sheila. And for those of you who are wondering about Meet the Author, we will spend about 2/3 of our time having a conversation with Robyn. Sheila and I will post your questions, comments on the chat. I'll take it up as it comes along. And then our hope is towards the end, 1/3 of the time, you're going to have more of a direct conversation, which is you'll unmute yourself and talk back and forth. So that's our plan. It's being recorded. So just know that if you are on camera, your face will be recorded and it'll be shared within the Taos community where we have our Meet the Author series. And with that, Sheila, take it away.
Okay, so Robyn, let's just kick this off by identifying that, you've written this book encouraging us to reconceptualize justice, and you ask us to consider it not as this abstract, ideal standard, legal kind of notion or thing, but as something that we create together. So can you tell us more about this? How is it that justice is something we make together?
Well, it's easy. We just imagine it so, Sheila. I think this is the important thing. We can take justice as an abstract, idealized goal that's out there to achieve, and we can try and achieve it, and we've done it very badly. I mean, that's just my overall assessment of the last X hundreds of years of attempting to engage in justice. And not only have we done it badly, it's getting worse as far as I'm concerned. So it's a very simple question. If that doesn't work, why don't we switch over to another way of looking at it? And from my point of view, if we imagine it as a quality of a relationship, rather than an abstract goal, we've got more chances of it. Can I just do something terribly bad here? And I've just got me in my face and nobody else. I can't talk to myself.
I just I pinned you, meaning I made you larger than others. If you prefer not.
No, just take me away, please.
I will take you away so you can be off your view.
I don't like talking to myself. It's such a weird phenomenon.
Sorry about that. How is that now?
Much better.
Okay.
Don't give me. I want to see all the other people here.
Let me just put it that people on your own end, you can spotlight her for yourself. You can pin her, and that way she is larger than the rest of us. But Robyn, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so really it's one of the justices is we use it in our everyday life as a judgment of a quality of a relationship anyway. And then we confuse ourselves by thinking it's a goal that we want to be able to obtain. So that what I've just simply said, or let's reimagine it totally as a relational quality rather than anything else. And if we're going to do that, then we need to look more seriously, and this is, again, not talking necessarily to specific social constructionist people, but to a broader community of justice scholars when I was writing this. We've got to re-look at the notion of relationship and a relational view altogether. In the justice literature, they take relationship in many instances in a very primitive or basic sense, that the best argument you'll usually get is that we need to look at relationship as a more important aspect of the world than we've previously looked at. And that's really great, but it's not good enough. And so that what we've got to do is to move this whole notion of relationship to the centre stage, rather than just as an extra feature of the world. And what I've tried to do is to make a three-step process here by saying, well, relationships are central. If we look at the world through relationships as relating, and how do we relate? We do so because we are participating with others. And in that participation, we're engaging in communication. And so when you go through those three steps, you end up finding yourself in a totally different way, or different world almost. You're looking at the world so terribly differently. And what you're doing is that you're looking at the world in a very dynamic way.
Robyn, can I ask you a question here?
Yep. Sorry. Yep, go on.
So I'm curious because we use the word dynamic.
Yep.
And everybody says, oh, okay, I get you what you're saying.
No.
But there's a worldview here. There's a shift in the way we understand relating.
Yep.
Can you expand on how, like when we were talking, you were talking about how participating is a thing that knits that relationality and communication. So I'm wondering if you can understand a little bit of that and what you mean by communicating.
What do I mean by communicating?
Yes,
well,
because I think you did a great job in unpacking the relationality or the ways that is loaded.
Yeah, well, look, it's. Let me find a pathway through this one. Let me put it in a very simple, well, not simple, but basically when we look at ideas like relationship or relating and communicating, we can see it as a very simple process. It's something we do sometimes, we relate sometimes, we communicate sometimes. And it's one of many things we do in our everyday world. In most instances, we see it that way, or a lot of people see it that way, and it becomes a mere technical process. It's a process that we engage in order to achieve other things. That's what I consider to be a simple view, both of relating and of communicating. Alternatively, we can see communicating and relating as consequential to everything in our lives. All of the important stuff goes on, and forgive me for using this technical word stuff, but I'm sure you get it. All the important stuff goes on in communicating and in relating. We aren't engaging in this as a mere process to get to the important stuff elsewhere. Okay, and I think that's this core difference between the way in which I take communicating to be as something where all the important stuff goes on within that process. And in looking at it like that, it quite clearly you can see, I hope, the extension of the argument that says that if all the important stuff goes on within the process of communicating and relating, then that's where we create our social worlds. That's where we create all that we understand as part of our social world. And so in this sense, for me, relating and communicating become two sides of the coin, as it were, that they're inseparable concepts, but it's quite a useful device to sometimes talk about one and sometimes the other, but they're not separable. They're not, certainly not in terms of the way in which we live in our lives. Did that help?
Robyn, I was just thinking another way of saying this, I think, checking with you, that, the predominant view that most of us hold, or not us, but most people hold, is a more psychological view, that that's the important stuff. And what you're trying to center here is that when we are together interacting, that's the important stuff, and that's where we should be looking. And I'm also picking up on from your book the argument that, to step away from this kind of God's eye view from nowhere of what is just action, that it's declared, it's here, and everyone should just know that, to recognizing the very unique and special complexity of what happens when people are engaged and communicating and relating. Which then you open up this notion of plurality of perspectives. So, how can we acknowledge the plurality of emergent values and beliefs and have a sense of justice when there's so many different ways in which justice is made sense of and comes into being?
With difficulty.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have to hang on to myself, despite the fact that I've been working on this, living this sense of thinking about the world, as it were, for a long time, is that there aren't any clean answers to any of this. And there's no solution to it. But what we do have is to a moral commitment to doing it as well as we can with each other. And how do we make sense of all of our differences? Well, we do it in the process that we're in at the time. And we're not trying to achieve an endpoint, because there is no endpoint to this ongoing process. We're always in communicating, we're always in relating. And in the end, it's how well we can do it, but not how we can achieve perfection in any sense.
You talk about 3 themes that are really important, and I wonder if you could say something about that, the relating, participating, and communicating. I guess you have already spoken
Yep.
to that.
Yep.
I guess then the issue is the shift, from a traditional view of justice to putting the emphasis on participating, relating, communicating, which then opens up these other themes of reflexivity and responsivity and so forth. And again, the issue of plurality emerges. And so are you proposing that that we start thinking of justice contextually, because we can't have a universal sense of justice?
We have a continually negotiated sense of justice, I think, is the neatest way to respond to that. And it can't be if within the worldview I'm trying to put forward, we need to be able to continually negotiating and renegotiating what it is we take to be just. And in fact, I tend to prefer to use the word acting justly or interacting justly to keep on emphasizing the importance of the fact that it's my fact at least, it's the quality of a relationship. It is the way in which we relate to others and it's a judgmental quality. It's more or less just, it's a bit like, it's very similar to notions that Dewey would write about when he was talking about acting truly, and he was trying to argue the same thing from a pragmatic perspective, that you don't have an independent notion of truth. Truth is something that comes out of the action or interaction, if we're taking this communication perspective. And in much the very same way, I would want to argue that justice or acting justly is something that comes out of the process of engaging with others. And because we share common sort of cultural stories and often a common cultural framework, we do tend to agree to a large extent on what might constitute justice. It's not as if it's just a random one-off thing. On the other hand, it should always be seen as always negotiable.
So,
Robyn, can I ask?
yeah.
Sure. Sorry, I was explaining, Ken. Hi. I'm between glasses at the moment, so I'm having trouble seeing as well. Yeah.
I wonder, it seems to me that now we're at a historical moment, at least in this country, where justice is really at stake. I mean, we believe the entire justice system may collapse, possibly within the next year or so. That's possible. So our justice system is set up as a court system, a system of laws. And I'm just wondering, what advice you might have. Where would you take us? How could we do this differently? Where should we go from here if you take a relational perspective?
Oh dear. That's only a small question.
But it's important if we're going to take an alternative point of view.
Yeah, I look, I
revise the court
absolutely.
system?
Oh, look, I think the court system stinks, to be honest. I mean, if
Yeah,
you
contentious.
if you but let me try and find the key to this one. Look, I actually don't think you can change it in any rapid way. And if I'm look at it perhaps with a slightly more cynical view, it may well be that the system needs to collapse before there's enough good intent to reconstrue something. I mean, this is where I'm giving away one of my secrets, that I tend to be a bit of an anarchist sometimes. So I'm quite happy to see chaos of some sort out of which you can only hope that morally well-intended people can reconstruct something together that's somewhat better. So that, what can you do with the... See, the part of the justice system, and particularly in the States, from what I'm able to make sense of reading about it only now, you know, from the other side of the world, as it were, is that it's premised so much on a core belief in the notions of the autonomous individual and of liberty and of freedom, and particularly at the moment, issues of freedom of speech, which allow for some quite horrendous things. And it's that real neoliberal emergence that's made it one worse and is most likely to, I can only hope, it leads to its eventual downfall, that it's self-imploding. And we're getting into my personal views on this, and I really should back off from it. I'm not quite certain whether I'm offending people here or not, because there are too many faces to see. But I don't think you can do anything simple, Ken, if you want an answer to that. But what we do have is that I think at the same time, we need to be engage in a personal commitment, an interpersonal commitment to what this is a wonderful opportunity to what I would call a radical relationality. And that happens at the micro level. And I can't see anywhere else where the real leverage lies other than between each and every one of us.
So I'm wondering if I can take up, Robyn, as
Yep.
you're building on that, a question that came up. Which parts of our current system begin to look differently when we apply this, and how? And as I've been hearing you talk, and as I've been reading the book, and it might sound problematic what I'm going to say, but that's part of the risk of speaking or participating. And that is, we are part of this legal system. We are not separate from it.
Mm.
And what I'm hearing you say is both the system of what we call justice and injustice emerges from this process you're talking about, this process mindset. And so we can say it's happening out there, but if we see ourselves as part of it, then back to Daniel's question, which parts of our current system begin to look differently when we apply this, and how? I'm wondering if that part is us, the radical responsiveness amongst us, between us. Yeah.
I mean, it's the question here is whether you want to change this, the world to make it quite more just, or whether you want to act more justly. And if you want to act more justly, that's a ground changing maneuver where you're trying to bring about change from the ground up, that rather than changing social structures in order to bring about change below. And I think that our attempts over the century years of changing social structures have not necessarily been as productive as we would like them to be. And I'm simply advocating the importance of bringing foregrounding, as it were, the importance of the importance of paying attention to the microcosms of our relationships and the quality of our relationships, and doing that in different contexts, and in particular in different public contexts. And if you look at paying attention to the microcosms, it means that you end up looking at, well, what's going on in that courtroom, if we go back to justice within courtrooms, and ask yourself the question, well, what's really going on here at the microcosm? How is that acting justly? Or you can, and I'll tell you that when you ask yourself that question and you look at it from a relational communication point of view, it's an extraordinarily unjust situation at the microcosm. And I think that starts to open eyes a little bit. If you ask yourself the same question, for example, in terms of social justice arenas, and particularly, let's say, racial injustice issues, you end up saying, well, we've attempted in a lot of ways to change structures, which is usually through legislation and political policy making. But what's missing is that we haven't changed the way in which we engage with each other. And that's still always, for me, it comes back to focusing on the ways in which we engage with each other. And in that engagement, we're building our social worlds out of each and every moment of engagement.
So is the only way to have this vision of justice, it sounds to me that you did mention on the micro level. So we're not looking at overturning institutional systems and going that approach, but it seems to me what's necessary then is education, because the majority of people don't take what you're referring to as the communication perspective. And so if we educate people about the importance of what we do at the micro level with each other as creating just ways of being, and if that proliferates, like a pebble dropped in a pool of water, kind of moves outward, is that the only way to change? Is that the only way to achieve this relational sense of justice? Yeah.
It's not an either-or approach here, Sheila. And that's what I'm starting to feel as though I might have misrepresented what I wanted to say. What I'm just trying to say is that we've forgotten something vital in our looking at notions of justice. And not only have, I believe, we've neglected something vital, we've also failed in our own obligation, our own interpersonal obligation to others, as making our own everyday commitment to engaging in a, let's just call it a more radical relationality. And yes, I suppose you can say that requires education, although I find that word reeks of institutionalisation, so I'm a bit hesitant to draw on that. But there's no doubt we need to change our cultural stories. And I think it will take some time to do so. On the other hand, I'm always encouraged by the fact that it's there are other cultures in this world in which those stories are different about our relationships with other people and the quality, the importance of that. So it's certainly possible, and we keep on talking about it. That's I mean, in the end, all we can do is talk.
Well, I want to trouble something that's troubling me.
Yep. There should be lots of things that's troubling.
So that's the first thing, we should be troubled, right? There we go.
Yeah.
And Gene is putting, just to expand before I go where I'm going, he's saying that he would like to hear more about your anarchism, meaning to continue being the trouble that you want to be. And on the issue of, do we need to invent something new, relationship by relationship, or change the current structure? So we're speaking to this piece right now in some ways. And the thing I want to trouble is calling it micro. And getting caught up in that language game, when I know a lot of constructionists over here would say it's more back and forth between the structure and the everyday talking. And in thinking about it as micro, do we obscure our participation in this larger thing that we call the structural or the macro?
No, it's still this either or talking. I'm sorry if I'm slipping into it as well. It's clearly picking up on that. But I mean, it's always the case that we can choose to see it one way. We can look at it. We can choose the ways in which we look at it. My choice is to say that I believe, and not in any factual sense, but that this is my story, that our structures are created out of our talking. And so to say that you've got an organizational structure, it's a very useful fiction. That structure, that structure is sustained, created and sustained through talk. So it's not so much that talking is at the micro level, but it's the core of creating any of our social stories, our social institutions, our social structures. So
that's very core to what I really appreciated in your book. Like, I think in this conversation too, we start slipping into this split. And I felt you really walked us into this relational communicative way of keeping me reflecting on how we get caught up in that split. Yeah,
and it's sort of, I find you bring some foreground something, bring something to the fore, or you put it back, and that's what we're doing. We're not saying it's either or. In most instances, the both and utterance is far more useful. But for me to look at notions of justice in the way in which I have, I've been trying to flip our conventional ways of looking at it and trying to say, or why don't we talk about it and look at it from this alternative world view? How useful is it? And I mean, that in the end is what I'm trying, really have attempted to do. And I think it's a very useful way of doing it. How we can bring it about is, of course, another vital question. And it needs to be if I'm going to be honourable to my own argument, it needs to follow through in the same type of process. It needs to say that, well, the change has to come out of changes in the ways in which we are acting justly with each other.
So I'm looking at the chat window. I'm also looking that Leanne has raised her hand. So Leanne, we'll come to you. Keep your hand up and we'll take up a couple of these chat questions. And I think we're getting close to opening it up, Leanne. So you might be our kicker off or in a couple of turns of conversation here. So Abby says, or asks, Robyn, if you wouldn't prefer to use educating for being too institutionalized, is there a different avenue or word you would use for people learning about what we're talking about here? Is it that we need to reclaim educating, or do you think it's an entirely different process? And Ken is also saying he would like to return to the issue of education, as our current systems are based so fully on individualism that there is no preparation for participating in the kind of relational process you envision. I feel like that how we might talk about that piece of looking at communication and thus justice and other concepts is really I like how you do it in your book, where if for those of you not gotten the copy or something, please do, because I love how you laid out current views of justice and categorize them and help them see it from this individualism point of view, from like we talk about individual rights right there, which is a liberal view, as you said, challenges this relational view we are talking about. So take it away in whichever direction, Robyn, you're thinking about.
Yeah. My main way in which I've thought about it so far is in terms of not so much educating in a broad principle, in just as bringing up kiddies, as it were, although that's could well be part of it. But there are a number of people within the justice arena, particularly the legal justice arena, who are certainly the ones that I've engaged with over the years, who are open to new ideas because they know how bad it is. It's as simple as that. And I would hope that they were amenable to reconceiving of different ways of looking at things, on provide them with an opportunity for reflection. So I see that for me was really, when I was writing the book, they were the people I had in mind. And it's because they're the people I've worked with. I wasn't thinking about how we would do it on a broader scale. I was also thinking about policy advisors, and again, it's because it's people I've worked with in the past who are unable to conceive of the fact that they have no idea what they're doing and they have no idea about the people that they're advising on in terms of just, policies that's supposed to bring about better social justice. And so that's one avenue, but it's still interpersonal, it's still a relational, it's still an engaged avenue in which you talk with, bring into the fold, as it were, help change their worldview. And I mean, there are different points of leverage, but the leverage for me is always between people.
It seems to me that that clarifies something for me, because you have laid out this whole perspective, this whole orientation to justice. And the question, I think, many of us are saying, well, how do we get there? How do we get there? And as you were speaking, I thought, oh yeah, well, you're a consultant, and so you're called in, and then you can work with people. So it seems to me that right now, how do we do this is everyone on this screen should take their professional practice of whatever nature it is, and then, as you say, at that interactive level, introduce others to these ideas and point out the futility and the frustration of the traditional view of justice, et cetera, et cetera. Am I reading you right, or have I oversimplified?
Yeah. And I mean, that's doable, and there's a lot of us in some ways. It can be quite frustrating. I no longer engage as a consultant, and on the other hand, there's this moral obligation, a moral responsibility to do this whenever you can. And yeah, that's what we do. And some of us have got more influence than others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Shall we go to questions, Saliha?
Yeah, I was thinking Leanne can pick us off, and people can use their digital hands so we can line folks up and then invite as the conversation goes well. Leanne, take it away. I lost you on my screen.
You're muted, Leanne.
Still doing that after how many years? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Leanne Leving. I'm a Kombumerri and Nogi woman from Southeast Queensland in Australia. So this is a really interesting conversation for me as a fellow Australian, but also as an Aboriginal woman here in Australia. Before I speak, I also just do want to recognise Jill Friedman, who I can see on screen, who I haven't seen or spoken to for a number of years, but who will always have a greater place in my life than what she will ever know. And I will reach out and let you know exactly how big that is one day, Jill. What I'm hearing, Robyn, and I do a bit of work in the cultural safety space, what I'm hearing, I get really frustrated too when people talk about systems and structural change as though they're these unchangeable things. But that's just the way the system is. Actually, it's people, and it's people just like us who make the systems.
That's right.
We saw in COVID laws change overnight. When people with influence want to change systems, they can. Where I have some struggles, continue to have some struggles, you said we have a shared common cultural framework, so we tend to agree about what constitutes justice. And you've also used the word moral a couple of times, and I think we clearly don't share common views about what constitutes justice, or if we do share those views, why is there such injustice in the world? We clearly don't share the same morals. And so what I'm hearing, while we can change systems through policy change, structural change, whatever, overnight, if for those people in power, what I'm hearing is you're advocating for an approach where we start with changing hearts and minds of individuals and using the power of conversation to be able to do that. As an Aboriginal woman, I'm from a collectivist culture where the common good is at the heart. We're a relational culture. So the common good is at the heart of what we do, how we be with each other, how we be in the world and with all living things. And it's possibly sounding a bit defeatist, but my question is, can we have justice in a capitalist world? Do we need the collapse of capitalism and a post-capitalist world? Because from my perspective, power is what differentiates, or power is the barrier to achieving what some of us would like to socially construct in this world. And I do think justice is one quality of relationships that if we focus not just on justice, but on the quality of our relationships, we would have justice and compassion and belonging and love and healing and lots of wonderful, amazing things. Is any of that possible at the systemic and structural level for as long as there's power? And what I associate then strongest with power is money. Sorry, that's a really big, broad question. How would you speak to that, Robyn?
I'd take a great big breath, Leanne. Oh dear. Look, there's no doubt that the whole sort of neoliberal ethic, for want of a better way of describing it, that governs our Western world at the moment is horrendous in terms of quality of life for ordinary people. And that same linkage to whiteness and power is also fairly disturbing, and something that I'd certainly like to see a whole lot less of. How do we get rid of it? You can. Do you want me to really say how we could get rid of it? Or should we get rid of it? Yes, we should. How? Let's work at it. I certainly don't think that it's through. Oh no! Look, please. That's. I think that's going beyond what the issue is at stake here. My issue is that we can, if we want to change, there are ways of doing it that don't require
this is great, Robyn. This is what I'm interested in. It's not how we get rid of capitalism and power. This is my point. Okay. I think they're always going to be around. So what can we do as individuals while we have to work within in that kind of society?
The best we can, Leanne, and I mean, I'm really appreciative of the Indigenous issues you're probably making reference to. And I think that there are so many good ways of I do wish people wouldn't ask me how to change the world. I struggle. I mean, I'd like to change the world too, very much.
I am hearing, Robyn, sorry if my question has, I am hearing you want to change the world one heart and mind at a time, is what I'm hearing, because we are,
well, I can't do it any other way. You know, it's as simple as that. But if you get a chance to change the heart of your Prime Minister, go for it. If you get a chance to, I mean, I've taken every chance I have been able to change the hearts and mind of various politicians over the years, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's as valuable, if not more valuable, than saying, you know, you've got to change the education system. That's too abstract. It's too far removed from our everyday realities. And I'm just trying to bring the focus back onto our everyday realities. That's where we live. And it might be in organisations, it might be in, you know, a law court, it might be in any number of valuable organisations where we can have an influence.
If I may jump in here, I think that was one
Yeah.
of the valuable things about your book.
Mm.
To Leanne's question, what can we do? Is seeing how we are organized by abstractions and seeing justice as an ideal that's an abstraction that doesn't give enough credence to what we do to create a just engagement, and not having kind of a cultural repertoire around that, except for the few folks who have it. And I think that piece is what I was finding very useful as part of this change-making process that we're talking about. And hopeful, even as Ken was saying earlier, what do we not do right now when the world and the systems that we know are crumbling? Your book was very helpful in, like, it doesn't have to crumble my making of the moral space that I'm part of, as much as it feels hopeless at times.
There's not much if you've take on board the primary obligation that you have towards other people, which within my relational communication view, you know, goes hand in hand, then of course you've got to keep on engaging with others at that level of commitment to others. And that's a good starting point. Which reminds me, actually, Sheila, a question to you. You said that when you read the book on justice, that it gave you something more to think about in terms of your writing on relational ethics. So how does that fit with what we've just been saying?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, you know, in broad strokes, I would say a relational ethic is an ethic of discursive potential, meaning that it kind of opens up the possibilities for the ways in which we can engage with one another, expands our vocabularies. And I think that very much that's what you're talking about here. And you know, I think we all are on board, you know, but like, so how do we do it? And, you know, we could step into, we all change the world one conversation at a time way of thinking, which I think is, you know, we do the best we can. We use our professional positions to reach whatever audience is our audience and try to, you know, convey this idea of of the centrality of how we relate with one another, creates the world we live in, creates the sense of what's just, which may be very different from another community's sense of what is just, but that doesn't mean that then we have to adjudicate between those two senses. That means, you know, the ethical thing to do is to bring them into dialogue with one another, and hopefully not a synthesis, but sort of a co-creation of something ever more new. So, and to keep the interaction, keep the dialogue going. So for me, you know, what you wrote in this book was just a deep resonance with those sorts of ideas, that the central piece is how we connect with one another, but but the problem still remains. Like, how do we shift this highly individualized neoliberal ideology that we live within, and and just sort of expand these ideas in this way of being. It's a tough task, I think.
Can I also break in to say one thing about this as well? Because I find some reason for optimism in the fact that, yes, we can move towards a dialogic way of relating, but we don't know how to do dialogue. It's not built into our fiber that we know how to relate to each other to bring about any kind of equanimity. Justice is just another way of trying to create order. How do we get along when people are moving in many directions? And we are constantly trying to adjust that, even from our day-to-day relationships all the way up through our organizations and up to the international level. But the fact of knowing how to do dialogue seems to be central. And I think what I find some optimism in is looking at educational systems and the movements towards much more relational forms of pedagogy, evaluation, restorative justice programs, and so on, so that moving education into the point where we actually can do these things, I think is a first step. And I think if I look around the sort of globally at this point, there's an enormous movement in that direction. And I think that is a changeable system.
Yeah, I think that you're right in that sense, Ken. And there's for example, the restorative justice movement, which is, got its fingers not just in the legal arena, but in the educational one as well, for dealing with a whole lot of school-based issues. That's an important, again, another important site of leverage for change. And I think they could be doing it exceptionally better than what they're doing it at the moment. And one of the chapters in my book looks at the whole idea of restorative justice. And I know both you and Sheila have mentioned it in your book on relational responsibility, the importance of the notion of relational responsibility to issues of restorative justice. And as a principle, it's really great. But when you look at it in practice, it could do with so much more work. And again, that's another arena in which change could happen. And it could do with so much more work because in many, many instances, the process of engaging in restorative justice is taken to be a technical issue rather than a complex relational issue. And when it's just taken to be a technical issue, you'll often find restorative justice programs following scripts. You'll find people engaging in restorative justice that have no training in the whole idea of facilitation. You have cops doing restorative justice processing, which is just an anathema as far as I'm concerned to the whole notion. So that there are lots of mid-range aspects to these important trends that we could be making contributions to.
I'm looking at time. I think this conversation can continue. I said this to Robyn, that this will just be a starter.
We haven't even really talked about specific justice context. That was just my one opportunity to do so then.
Exactly. And I wanted to say that this may be because if you've not gotten the book, I'm just going to say a couple of things about the book, where it starts out by looking at the current justice system and the current models. And it really, I love the book because all these different threads I was holding, I saw it in one place. my years of work has been in what I would call justice making spaces, but I didn't see it or say it like that. And so it was very helpful to put name to it. And there are several chapters where Robyn takes it up in the social justice realm, in the racial justice realm, and continues to see this relational communication perspective, how that, not as a theory or a model of justice, but engagement of making justice happen. And that's very helpful, I think. And we didn't do justice, I think, to going in there, because it's too, I think the complexity keeps us in the space where we were. And I would love to see people come back. Let us know if you want to have another conversation that'll take us a step closer. I've been trying to engage Robyn and saying, let's plan something else. So any last words, questions, comments from you, Robyn, or from folks who've been listening? If you want to put in a word or a thought on the question you're leaving with. Robyn, you're
Oh, yeah, no, I was just thinking.
or a pause is what I'm saying, not a closing.
I will be, I am trying to, when I wrote the book Justice, this particular book, it was the end culmination of a very long intellectual journey for me, where I've been mulling over notions of justice since about the 1980s. So, and I kept on having experiences, professional and personal experiences, where this issue of justice became important. So the end consequence of the book was that I said to myself, I have to try and do the best I can for looking at it as broadly as I could within a relational communication view. And so that was the challenge. And in order to do that, I had to engage with multiple audiences and multiple disciplines. And I personally found it really very challenging to do so. But it became a coherent whole, what some of the major issues were. And if you can bear to do it, I'd encourage you to try and read it as well. But I'm now trying to write about some of the issues in a more accessible way. And is this where I'm going to promote myself?
Please do. You've got a
I've
Substack.
just started a Substack public essay series, and my very first posting occurred last week, and my next posting will be sometime this week. And I would invite you to subscribe. All of my work is free because I don't believe in charging anything for it, so it's not going to cost anything. And it's just Robyn Penman at Substack. You'll find it there.
I posted the link in the chat, so if people just want to click on it and bookmark it, you'll have it. We'll also, you can reach out directly to Robyn, and I'll put in.
Look, if I haven't said anything, if I haven't addressed the burning issue that you guys might have, feel free to just email me and talk. It's always hard. Leanne's the only one who could possibly talk to me in real life, in real time. It's distinct from any other way, but delighted to engage in conversation. And the more we can foster acting justly, the better I think the world might be.
And if those of you want to continue in the Taos Common, you can post questions and comments there as well. And Leanne, I really think that question about moral order and moral peace needs to be fully unpacked too. I think I just heard that. So the things like that, I'm leaving with lots of questions. So hopefully you all will reach out, let us know how this conversation went, and continue it on Taos Commons. And Sheila, any last words before I thank
Thank you, Robyn, and thank you all for being here, and yeah, continue the conversation.
Lovely, and thank you for being here as well.
Thank you, Robyn, for the book. It's amazing. It's so much of our times and needed. And thank you for that.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.